Welcome to Gomer Games Tips. I'm Gomer. Alright, the last video here we touched on the mass transit DLC. We're kind of straying away from the vanilla here for a couple videos and then we'll go back. But I just wanted to cover all the mass transit kind of together so that way you kind of know what options are available, and then if you upgrade to the mass transit DLC you know which ones you get. Which is one of my favorites, so I do like it. The last one we went over the monorail and went over the metro, and I'm sorry, the last video. Last video was trams and trolley buses from the Sunset Harbor DLC, which are the same thing as trams, really, in my opinion. I mean, there are some slight differences, capacity differences, and that type of thing, but they kind of work the same. They work with overhead lines, power lines, and you have to replace all the roads and that type of stuff. Check that video out there. Okay, so I wanted to go over the ferries. I wanted to do it in a separate video. Just because there is so much. I did lay a canal down right here, and I did that ahead of time because it kind of messes with the water. If you watch my video on water current, it kind of explains how, like when you place rocks and you do anything with any sort of landscaping with water or whatever, it kind of messes with it. So you have to wait for it to settle down before you can work with it. So I went ahead and did this ahead of time just so I had it. But I wanted to show a stop inside a canal, so that way you could use the canals to your advantage and maybe create a canal city or something. I've seen quite a few things on YouTube. There are several options. You've got the shallow and the medium and the deep, and then you've got the wide, shallow, medium, and deep, and these came with the mass transit. And this is the medium, and then this last segment here is the deep. What I always try to do, because it tends to work out a little bit better as far as the water flow, is I always try to, if you go with shallow for the majority of your canal, right when you reach the river or the ocean, go to medium. If you go with medium, right when you reach the river or the ocean, go with deep. And it tends to kind of work out a little bit better as far as the water flow goes and that type of stuff. It just tends to work a little bit better. Alright, so what we're going to do, first thing you got to do when you're doing ferries here, just like the bus and the trams and the trolley buses, you have to place a depot. Right now you can see the ferry line tool is blacked out. You can't do anything with it. Won't let you do anything. So you have to place a depot. And it's kind of a bulky building, but you have to place it on a shoreline, obviously. And it does need to be connected to a road and power and all that stuff. So I'm just going to place it over here, since this city, we're not really going for aesthetics here or anything like that. I'm just kind of showing you guys how this all works. So we'll connect that there, and then once you place that, the routes open up, but you have to place stations. Whenever you place a canal, it automatically puts the ferry routes in there. But you have to place the ferry stops, is what they call them. So what I'm going to do, just so I show you this large ferry stop here, I'm going to place it over here. And this is going to look so bad. Yeah, that looks awful. But this is a city that I'm building. This is just kind of for tutorials and to avoid anything. That's kind of awful. But we'll place that down there, and then as you see, if you look at the ferry lines right here, there's 2 points right here. And what you do is you connect, like if draw on a road, rail line, or anything else, power line, you connect to that point there. And then those two are connected. And then you have to connect your depot to these lines too. I'm not sure if both of these need to be connected, but I always connect both of them. Because usually when I have I do it very, very often. I don't have very many ferries in my cities, but when I do that, I usually put them on like the outside of a loop or something, so that way they would come in from this side and then leave from this side or something like that. Is usually what I do, so I really don't have to worry about whether both sides need to be connected. But then you need another stop in here, so you place it. We'll place it right here. And then as long as it has that ferry route, it's fine. You can place that on there. So what we'll do, we'll create a route here, and then we'll add one there, and then we'll go back and complete it. And then I don't think these need to be connected to roads to work. Boy, that looks awful. But we'll go ahead and you'll see that the ferries come out here. Let me let the city run here for a second. Okay, as you can see, they do this little loop because they run down to the edge of the canal and then loop around, because the way the ferry routes work, they work just like roads. So everything passes on the left, so they have to go down and circle around and then come back. So remember that when you're planning your routes for your ferry boats, you kind of have to plan that out so it looks realistic. So they come down and do that. But they basically stop at the stop and pick up passengers. And then they move on to the next end of the next stop. Now, obviously, this is very crude, very quickly done. You can use, when you're doing the ferry routes, you're drawing the ferry routes, you have your curve tool and your freeform tool, so you can kind of, I guess, massage the routes a little bit better, so there's less sharp angles, and so the boats aren't all jerking around going every which direction. So you can kind of play with that and make it look a little bit better. Like I would come in here at an angle with a slight curve on it as best I could. The river's kind of limited there, but I would still come in at an angle if I was doing this for real. And then obviously this would probably just come out and then loop over this way. I probably wouldn't even have done this like this. And then probably came down and created a small curve here right out of the canal. is probably the best way to do that. But that's how ferries work. The canals, whenever you place them, the ferry routes are already placed in there, and then you have to draw them on the ocean or rivers, and then you just connect the two. Uh, you don't necessarily need a canal. You can place a stop on the shoreline, two different points on the river, and just connect them with a ferry line, and they will work just fine. Canals are very handy if you're wanting to create special projects, or I think they're aesthetically pleasing too. You could create really cool neighborhoods with canals, maybe put walking paths around them and stuff like that, and not even use them for the ferries. Just use them for the aesthetic purposes only. I think that's just, I think that's great. That's what I've used them for. There's so many things you can do with them. I think that's going to be it. The airport that came with mass transit. It came with blimp depots which work as mass transit. They move. The problem is they only have a small capacity. They don't really. I haven't really been able to get them to work in the sense they work, but they don't really do anything for the city other than the aesthetics. It kind of looks cool with the blimp moving around and everything. But as far as helping your traffic congestion or anything, I haven't found that it's actually worked. If anybody has, please feel free to leave a comment. Maybe I'm just not doing it correctly or something. I just haven't been able to get that. And then the helicopters, that's Sunset Harbor. Those work very well, sometimes too well. You have massive numbers of people waiting at the heliports for transport, but those do work. And then these are the vanilla airport here, which is kind of out because of the airport DLC. But you basically, it works kind of like a inner city bus terminal. And the cargo airport, which is trying to see, I guess the cargo airport came with the Industries DLC. Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't think that was vanilla. I didn't think it was. But the airport you just place down, and it brings in tourists and brings in people to your city. And then we'll talk more about the cargo airports with the industry DLC. And then obviously there's a DLC, airport DLC now, which is completely rewrites the book on this stuff. Just ignore that. That's workshop stuff. And then the blimps, they work just like the blimps and the helicopters work just like the ferries. You have to draw the routes out. And then once you do that, you have to place the depots, obviously, and connect the depots per the routes. And then you have to connect the lines just like you did with the buses or the trams or any of the other ones. You just create a line, go over to the stop, and then just come back, or go to multiple stops, whatever you want to do. And then they run forward from there. Any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments. Any suggestions, leave those in the comments. I am curious to see if anybody's been able to get the blimps to work in the city to move enough people to relieve any sort of traffic congestion. If anybody has, please feel free to leave that. I'm curious if anybody's been able to get that to work in the city there. But hit that subscribe button, support the channel, and hit that like button, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for your time. This is Gomer with Gomer Games.